Hello, my amazing Algebra Half students. This is Mrs. A, and I love math. Well, today we are here with lesson 78, and we're talking about inserting parentheses and the order of addition. So the first thing we want to learn, and I want you to commit this to memory, subtraction is addition of the opposite. Subtraction is addition of the opposite. That means, yes, we can change subtraction into addition by attaching the minus sign to the number behind it and then adding. So let's look at an example of this. We all know that 5 take away 3 is 2. 5 minus 3 is 2. But if we're going to attach the minus sign, we're going to attach the minus to the number behind it. So now instead of minus 3, it becomes plus a negative 3. And we know when we add opposite signs, we really subtract them. We subtract the absolute value and take the sign of the greater, right? We've already learned those rules. So we're going to turn all of our subtractions into addition in this lesson and see how easy it makes adding and subtracting signed numbers. Okay, so here is our first little example. We have a negative, a positive, a negative, and a negative. I'm going to turn all of the negatives into addition of the opposite. So I'm going to just say, all right, I've got a negative 4. I'm going to start with that. I'm going to add a 3. Now, he wasn't negative to start with, so I'm just going to keep him like he is. I'm going to add a negative 2, attaching the negative to the 2. And then I'm going to add a negative 6. Once we do that, the cool thing is it does not matter which order we do them in, as you will see later. All right, but we're just going to do these left to right. And we're going to say negative 4 plus 3. Opposite sign, subtract, take the sign of the greater. The greater valued number is negative. So we're going to say a negative 4 minus 3 is 1. And then we're going to take that and add it to the negative 2. Okay, so a negative 1 and a negative 2, those are the same sign. Same sign, add, take the common sign. So wouldn't that be, so we'll say plus a negative 2. And that's going to wind up being a negative 3, okay? And then we take the negative 3 and go with the negative 6, and they're the same sign. So we're going to wind up with a negative 9 for the answer. Okay, now your book does every little step, and that's fine. You can start here, add the 2, get the 1, and then you can add the negative 1 and the negative 2 and get the negative 3, and then you can write down negative 3 plus a negative 6 is negative 9. It's all depending on what your teacher wants you to do, okay? So I'm okay with mental math in this, but basically you have to do what your teacher tells you to do. Okay, so whether you can do it in your head or whether you need to do it all on paper, that is up to your teacher. Okay, and then we're going to do another one. So just to show you how to do it out on paper, I'm going to do this one, a little bit more work written out on this one just so that you can take your pick here. So we've got a negative 2. We're just going to attach that plus the 3 plus the negative 5 and then plus the 7. Okay, so moving left to right, I'm going to add those two together and I'm going to get a positive 1. Okay, so now I'm going to add these two together. And your teacher might let you do this, where you're just kind of showing what you're doing instead of rewriting them every time. Positive 1 and negative 5 is a negative 4. Okay, so that's going to be a negative 4. And then I'm going to take the negative 4 and add it to the positive 7. And that's going to be a positive 3. So my answer is positive 3. The reason I like this method is because you're showing your work and yet you're not recopying everything down. My problem is that when I recopy things, I might slip a sign. So I'd rather have the original, go ahead and fix it with the attaching the sign, and then I like to just kind of draw a little little line to show, okay, I'm taking these two and I get the +1. I'm taking the +1 and the -5 and I get a -4. I'm taking the -4 and the +7 and I'm getting a +3, and then I circle my answer. I like that method. Your book does a little bit differently, and I'll show you that now. Okay, so here's the problem that we just did. And your book also takes the +3 and makes it a +3, which I don't do. I think that's a little redundant. But if you want to do it, that's fine. That's what your book is teaching you to do. And then your book takes the +1 and then shows the rest of it. And then they showed you what they did. Okay? And if your teacher wants you to do it that way, then you do it out that way. But they still got the +3, which is what we did. All right, so here we have another problem, and we're going to first, and I do encourage you to actually do this, we're going to write with the parentheses all of the numbers that have negatives. So we're going to change this to plus, attach the negative, plus a -2. Attach the negative, plus a -6. Now this one's already positive, so I'm just going to write it down. I don't really need to put any parentheses. And then the last one is negative again, so I'm going to attach the negative. I'm almost out of room. All right, so now I'm going to go through and I'm going to start here. I add these two together because they're the same sign. I add the absolute values and I get a -5. And then I'm going to add these two together, -5 and -6, same sign, so it'll be a -11. And then I add these two together. -11 and +2 are opposite signs, so I'm going to subtract their absolute value and take the sign of the big guy, right? So that's going to be a -9. And then I add these two together, and I get a negative, and a negative is going to be a bigger negative. So it's going to be a -16. And -16 would be your answer. And that is the answer that you have in the book under example 2. They just did it a little bit differently because they wrote down each little pair as they did it. Okay? The next one is actually under the next section, which says order of addition. So basically what this section is saying is, hey, it doesn't matter which order. Once you turn it to addition, addition is commutative, and addition can be done in any order. So we're going to do this one left to right like we just did the last one, and then we're going to mix it up a little bit. So we're talking about specifically the order, but we're going to do the first part the same way we have been. So the first thing we do is we use our parentheses, attach our negatives, plus a -2, plus a 3, because it was already positive, plus a -4, plus a 5. Okay? So then the negative ones are in parentheses and the positive ones don't need parentheses, but then you can tell which ones are negative and which ones are positive just at a glance. So that's kind of a benefit. So here we're going to add these two together, get a -5. We're going to take these two, they're opposite signs, so we subtract and get a -2. We take these two, add them together. Negative and negative is going to give us -6 because we're going to add the two values. And then a -6 and a +5 is going to give us a -1. So we did that in left to right order, and we got a -1. Now we're going to do the same problem, but we're not going to do it in the same order. So now that I've already done it left to right, I know it's -1. I'm going to erase all this work. And I'm going to show you a different way to do the problem. I'm going to add all the positives together first. Well, I have a +3 and a +5, so I'm going to get a +8. So now I'm done with those. Now I'm going to take all of the negatives and I'm going to add them together. So I'm going to put plus a negative, okay, and I have a -3, so we'll make a little rickrack under there. -3, -2, -4. When I add all those up, -5 plus a -4 is a -9. 8 plus a -9, opposite sign subtract, I get a -1 again. And I did it in a completely different order, but I got the same answer. Isn't that cool? Okay, so here we are with your practice. Copy your problem down and then pause your video. I want to see if you can do it all by yourself. Okay, our first step is to take everything that's a negative and put it in parentheses and stick a plus sign in front. So we've got the -4 plus the 6 plus a -1 plus the 7 plus a -3 plus the 2. Okay, so I'm doing it a little bit differently than your book does. Your book is putting every number in a parenthesis, and I'm only putting the negative numbers in the parenthesis. They're both fine methods. They both give you the same answer. Now, I'm going to do this one out of order. I'm going to do all of the positives, and then I'm going to subtract all of the negatives. So ready? I've got a +6 and a +7 and a +2. So I'm going to take all my positives, and 6 plus 7 is 13 plus 2 is 15. Okay, and then I'm going to take all my negatives. -4, -1, -3, that's a -8. So I'm going to put plus a -8. I'm going to add them together, and I'm going to get a +7. Okay, so we did it one way, and we got the +7. So now let's erase that and do it the other way. Got to get my eraser down here. So now we're going to do it. Oops, I didn't want to erase that. I wanted to erase what was under it. Now I got to go back and fix this. Okay, so that was a -1. That was a 6 plus -4. Did I fix it? I think I fixed it. Okay, so this is what we got when we did it out of order. Now let's see what we get when we do it left to right. So we add those two together first, and negative, positive, opposite sign, subtract. We're going to get a +2. Add these two together. Again, opposite sign, 2 and a -1. It's going to be a +1. And then we add these two together. +1 and +7 is a +8. We add the 8 with the -3, and we're going to get a +5. And I've got my 7 in the way. We'll move my 7 down a little bit because that 7 was the old answer, right? And then we got the 5 and the 2, and we get the +7 again. So we did it two different ways and got the same answer. And here we are again with, oh my goodness, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 numbers added together. This is a lot. Okay, this is the longest one we've had. Let's see how we do. We're going to go left to right first. So here we add those two together, negative and negative. So we're going to get a -6. Add those two together. -6 and a -3 is a -9. We add those two together. -9 and 2 is a -7. Add those two together. -7 plus 3 is a -4. Add those two together. -4 plus 2 is a -2. And lastly, add those two together and wind up with a 2. Whew. Got it all done. All right, so we wound up with a 2, and now you can look at that. Hopefully you did this on your own already. I forgot to tell you to pause your video, didn't I? All right, so now I'm going to erase this, and we're going to do it another way. We're going to take all of our positives. You know what I did? I forgot to put them in parentheses, but you didn't get messed up, did you? Okay, so basically it works even if you don't have the parentheses there. If you remember to attach the sign in your brain, you're going to find out that you don't have to put them in parentheses. But we're going to go ahead and finish. So we're going to have -2. I'm going to go ahead and do it the right way. -4, -3, plus 2, plus 3, plus 2, plus 4. Okay, so that was our old answer there. So now we're going to do it the other way. We're going to get all of our pluses. So these that are in parentheses are the negatives, and then these that are out of the parentheses are the pluses. So 2 plus 3 is 5, plus 2 is 7, plus 4 is 11. So we have 11 plus a -2 plus a -4 is a -6 plus a negative 3 is a negative 9. 11 plus a negative 9 is a 2. And guess what? We got the right answer even when we didn't have the parentheses on there, because you were attaching the number in your brain. So math is really cool. And it's very consistent because it was made by our Lord God Almighty, and it never changes. And this is Mrs. A, and may God bless your day.